Let me get started then. Good afternoon, Mark Scheifmeyer, the city's hearing examiner. I've been asked to convene a public hearing in reference to an application referred to as the New Market Landing apartment project, seeking approval of phased binding site plan approval. It bears the city's hearing number TUM 23-0909, the applicant being Grandview's New Market, represented through Terrell Bradley, who is present on the screen appearing remotely. And the city appears through Alex Baruch, one of its planners. In advance of today's hearing, I have received the staff report prepared by Mr. Baruch. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I reviewed that in its entirety. I've also received all of the other materials that are found on the city's website relating to this project. In each of those, I have carefully reviewed in advance of today's hearing, including all public comment. So the purpose of today's hearing is threefold, and I'm not certain if I am speaking to anyone other than Mr. Baruch and Mr. Bradley or not. Mr. Baruch, do you have a sense if there are others present today?
Currently, we have one of our permit technicians on as an attendee, just to make sure that it is accessible to the public and available to register. So she is showing up as an attendee right now.
And that's the only person?
That's correct. Okay.
Which is somewhat surprising given the number of public comments received earlier in the hearing. So can I be confident that that's not a technical issue of some kind?
That is correct. It is not a technical issue. Okay. I think that we did resolve the majority of those comments.
Okay. All right. That's good to hear. Okay. So when I have a hearing in which when members of the public are not participating, I allow those who are presenting, whether city staff or the applicant, to compress their presentations a little bit. Again, typically they're for two purposes. One is to further educate me, and the other is to fully educate the public who are attending. But if there are no members of the public present, you can be mindful that I have carefully reviewed all of these materials in advance. So your presentation can take into consideration that unless there's something new or different, then I have probably reviewed it fairly carefully already. And so, but just
we did have one just join, just to let you know. Okay. One member of the public. Yep.
Great. So for the benefit of all those who are present, today's hearing has several purposes. One is to allow city staff a fuller opportunity to explain its staff report and its recommendations and any proposed conditions. Followed then by an opportunity for the applicant to respond to the city's presentation, to add to or subtract from what the city has suggested, and then following that, an opportunity for members of the public to be heard. As it appears that there are a few members of the public present, I'm not going to impose any time restraints on public testimony. Once any public testimony has been received, we'll allow both the city and the applicant an opportunity to respond to that testimony. All those who testify today will do so under oath, and so we'll get underway with presentation through city staff. And Mr. Baruch, we'll have you sworn then. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead.
Great. My name is Alex Baruch, and I'm a planner with the city of Tumwater. Before you today is a preliminary binding site plan to subdivide one parcel totaling approximately 8 acres into 3 lots, phased commercial and residential development with associated infrastructure, parking, and open space. The property is located south of Tumwater City Hall at the corner of New Market Street Southwest and 73rd Ave Southwest, and is in the Town Center Zone District. The property is mostly flat with vegetation and trees. Surrounding properties are zoned Town Center. The Aquifer Protection Overlay District also applies to this property. The Overlay District restricts hazardous uses to protect aquifer recharge areas. The proposed uses for this project include apartments and commercial uses such as daycare, gym, office space, and none of those uses are restricted land uses in the Aquifer Protection Overlay. Proposed improvements are shown on the preliminary binding site plan and include connection to the surrounding road network, grading, infrastructure, and open space. All new utilities on site will be undergrounded pursuant to the Tumwater Municipal Code. The preliminary binding site plan application was submitted, and subsequently a notice of application was issued on July 14th, 2023. During the notice of application comment period, the Nisqually Indian Tribe, Squaxin Island Tribe, Port of Olympia, Thurston County, and several community members commented on the project. The Nisqually Indian Tribe requested a cultural resource study be completed prior to issuance of any grading work on the property. Condition 12 was included in response to their comment. Community comments related to a tree on the property that was requested to be retained were also received by the city. The forester's report included in the packet stated that the tree was diseased and was proposed to be removed due to the overall site infrastructure and location of elements integral to the site. Concurrently, the project was reviewed by the City of Tumwater Transportation Manager, who provided a transportation concurrency ruling, which stated that trips are proposed to be sent through the Tumwater Boulevard I-5 interchange, which will require payment of mitigation fees or construction of the required interchange improvements. The city reviewed a SEPA environmental checklist and other information submitted by the applicant. A mitigated determination of non-significance was issued on March 29th, 2024, and no appeals of the SEPA threshold determination were filed. During the SEPA comment period, Washington State Department of Ecology commented on the application with some specific comments related to elements of construction activities. No immediate concerns were brought up about the land use application itself. Lastly, a public notice was sent out on August 16th, 2024, and no comments have been received through today. Notices for all three processes were mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the subject property and various agencies, posted on site and published in the Olympian. With this information, staff finds that the preliminary binding site plan as conditioned conform to the comprehensive plan, Tumwater Municipal Code, planning standards, development standards, and policies of the City of Tumwater. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary binding site plan with the attached conditions. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time. I'd be happy to share my screen with the site plan if that would be helpful.
It might be, thank you.
Okay. Just pulling that up now.
Thank you. It's now present. I notice there is no showing of landscaping plan on this site plan, and I don't find it in the drawings either. Is there a landscaping plan presented today?
So there will be one phase by phase with the site development grading plans, and it will need to meet the Tumwater Municipal Code as a part of those reviews. I believe there was a, in the preliminary civil plans, there should have been a landscaping sheet for phase one at a minimum. But I'm not sure if that made it into that set of plans.
If it did, I didn't see it. I may have looked too quickly, but I don't recall seeing anything that was showing landscaping on it. If you think there is one, Mr. Brook, I would appreciate receiving it just to complete my knowledge about what's proposed for phase one.
Absolutely.
Which you spoke briefly to the fact that roughly 10 members of the public understandably are expressing remorse over the loss of the very old, very large maple tree located along the boundary of the project. And the record should reflect you're indicating by arrow that it's located along the central east boundary of the site in proximity to what would be Terminal Street, or maybe 71st. The name keeps changing in the materials. But tell me a little bit more about that. I know you mentioned it. You point out that it is a dying tree, but nonetheless, for the completeness of this hearing, let's have a fuller discussion about that tree, since it has been a concern to so many people. What else might you say about that tree, if anything? What do you think should be noted about it?
Absolutely. So in consultation with the forester's report that was provided and kind of overlaying the proposed infrastructure, we do believe it would be actually within the bounds of the right of way within 73rd Ave approximately. And that is a connection shown on the town center street plan as a connection of 73rd going across and connecting a couple of important streets for the build out of this network of streets within the city. Not to mention, as you stated, the tree is dying and has a disease. So it was not noted as a tree that could be retained as a part of the forester's report.
This is bouncing around, and it's hard not to on a large project, but maybe we should have some common street identifiers as they change from plan set to plan set. So one set of plans describe the north-south connector on the east side of the project as Terminal Street. The map in front, or the plan set in front of us, describes it as 73rd. There are some that have described it as 71st. So the east, or the north-south connector on the east side, what would be the preferred identifier for it?
Yeah, Terminal Street, I believe, would be the
okay.
preferred
I'm
connection.
sorry.
North-south, yes.
I got spun around. I'm sorry. I was thinking we were looking north. So
sorry.
Going back to where we were talking about the tree earlier, that's not on Terminal. It's located along the south boundary of the project, along what would be an extension of 73rd Street. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I apologize, and I'll try to be mindful that this map is flipped and not oriented to the north. And so again, in future discussions, you envision the north-south connector to the east being Terminal Street, then most likely?
Yes.
Okay. It's not a major thing. It's one of these curious little things. In various plans, the intersection coming in from the east of 71st sometimes appears to be a straight line and sometimes appears to be coming in from a point further south than the proposed extension of 71st. I didn't say that very clearly. So east of the proposed new Terminal Street, 71st seems to be on some maps at a more southerly location. And so it's not a straight line through there. On others, it seems to be a straighter street connection. Can you give me a sense of what the final version of 71st is planned?
I believe this is the anticipated layout right here, is that 71st will, curve down towards Terminal Street, and there won't be a connection further east, is my understanding. This was is currently a fire lane, and there is not a planned public road north-south to continue Terminal Street, from my understanding.
Okay, and so what will Terminal Street connect to the east?
To the east, it'll connect to 73rd, and then it will continue south towards Tumwater Boulevard once the adjacent port properties develop.
Okay, and will not have an easterly connection to 71st?
That's correct.
Okay, all right. Again, I apologize for how these questions bounce around. Let's turn to the Port of Olympia and its concerns over airspace and navigation agreements. The port had expressed concerns in early responses to the notice that this is near or in close proximity to the Olympia Airport, that while it doesn't fall within any high degree zones of impacts, it has potential for some impacts, and would recommend that both the applicant as well as each resident sign some form of abrogation agreement acknowledging the risk associated with living in this area. I hope I haven't condensed that too greatly. So in response to those concerns by the port, Ms. Brook, how might you respond?
Yeah, so to the city, since it is not within the airport overlay, there's not a set of conditions within the city ordinance for the city to impose. And we propose that the port and the city, sorry, the port and the applicant coordinate any of those details about navigation easements or having property owners sign or potential tenants sign agreements. Leaving that between the two of them and, not for the city to get in the middle of.
Okay. This will be a broader question about all that. I'm curious as to the airport's expressed concerns about residential development in this neighborhood, as this is the city's comprehensive plan for this neighborhood. What do you know if there was concerns expressed by the port at the time this portion of the comprehensive plan was established and the New Market neighborhood, or I'm sorry, the
Town center.
Zone was established, which specifically encourages residential development at the very area the port is expressing concern. What's the intersection between those 2 points, if that makes sense?
Yeah, like all planning processes, there are typically very long lead times and gathering of stakeholder discussions. My understanding is that the port was a big part of this process because it intersected with a lot of the port properties in this area, just to the east and to the south of this property. Not to mention, I believe there are some to the west as well. So I believe that they were a part of that planning process. And there are just different people that cycle into the port employment in different positions over time. So someone new, Mr. Hendrickson, was part of this review process. And the port was a part of the previous town center process. He expressed some of those other concerns that he had brought from previous experience and jobs as well.
Okay. It's not entirely clear how open space is accomplished. Your staff report notes that it meets the requirements for total square footage of open space given the size of the project. And that plan does certainly acknowledge some areas of open space. Specifically, it notes 3 internal courtyards, maybe 4. There's a play area. There's a pond that's probably a stormwater facility as well. And there's a 2nd-story courtyard noted, I think, in phase 3. Yes. But can you give me a better sense of how open space is achieved in this project?
Yeah, so it is definitely a combination of different mechanisms. There are internal clubhouses for recreation areas, as shown in phase 1, courtyards, phase 2 and phase 3, and then also those courtyards in phase 1. And it is intended that all of these open space uses would be available to be used by any resident within this area. Not to mention that there will most likely be other amenities within building 2 and building 3, not specifically shown on here, but that will be accounted for during the building permit review and overall site development grading review for each of those individual lots as well.
Is the proposed clubhouse at the southwest end of phase 1, is that then open space or is that commercial? Which category does that fall in?
That is open space, and we specifically separated out the commercial space and the open space from each other. So the commercial space is separate and distinct from I think it's 4,300 square foot clubhouse that is for the residential component of the project.
Okay. So that indeed, that's a significant portion of the open space, or achieving open space requirements.
Yes.
The that very plan shows a thin perimeter area that I can't, maybe a path, maybe some other form of landscape buffer, but it's not clear to me what it is. It surrounds the entirety of the project. What are we looking at? Is that sidewalks, or what is that being described?
So this squiggly path right here is a sidewalk going around the entire development. There should also be, for example, in this location, at least a 5-foot landscape buffer between the sidewalk and the parking. I believe that is 5 feet along this entire side right here. And there are certain applications of screening that will be required as a part of the landscape plan for the project. But yes, there is a larger sidewalk network surrounding the entirety of the project.
Okay. I keep circling back to landscaping and recognizing that it's preliminary at this point, and especially with respect to phases 2 and 3. But to the extent that there is significant massing of parking along the outer edges of the site, what do you envision as landscaping uses of landscaping to buffer and soften the impacts of that massed parking?
More than likely in this circumstance, there will be some sort of like 3-foot wall, architectural wall along the edge of the parking, and then landscaping in front of it adjacent to the sidewalk. I believe that's what would be prescribed with a 5-foot area.
Okay, all right, thank you. Given the size of this project, it's hard not to think of some of the concepts that will apply to a subdivision with roughly 400 residential units proposed. It's a little bit like a fairly significant size subdivision. And so some of the common themes sort of surface, for example, making sure that to the extent younger or children are living in these units, that there are safe walking routes to schools. To the extent that that has been considered, even though it's not a subdivision, what answer or what is the response to any concerns about making sure that students can safely walk, noting in particular that, of course, the high school is just a very short distance away. New Market, again, actually adjoins the facility. The middle school is a bit further away across the freeway, and other schools are further away still. So in terms of safe walking routes, Mr. Baruch, what would you say?
Yeah, so actually we're completing a sidewalk project along Israel Road right now that's helping to widen some of those sidewalks and improve the ADA accessibility along Israel Road. But this connects obviously to the north through New Market Street, and that improved sidewalk and those improved intersections will now allow for easier walking to those facilities, along with the library and City Hall immediately adjacent. So they are all connected by public sidewalk.
Okay, and to the extent that there would be middle school or grade school students, I assume the plan would be for busing of those students to those facilities.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there an affordability requirement for a project such as this? Does Tumwater have anything in its comprehensive planning or in its development regulations that imposes some consideration of affordability?
There's no required affordability component associated with this project. There's not a requirement within the municipal code.
Okay. The 4 streets that are proposed to be improved as part of this New Market 71st, 73rd, and Terminal, you know the status of each of those, and to what degree or what requirements of improvement would then be imposed?
So Newmarket Street itself will be a new road. Actually, all four of these roads will be new roads.
I asked the question poorly.
Oh, sorry.
To what type of road is each defined as? I assume Newmarket is commercial collector or something of a like nature. Do you know what its status would be?
I will have to defer to Tyrell on that. I just don't have it off the top of my head. Hopefully he does.
Because your city code will then determine what type of street frontage improvements are expected, as well as width of streets and other improvements based upon its status. And so you don't, apart from Newmarket, the other three, you're not certain of their status either.
I don't have it off the top of my head. I know it's in the Newmarket street plan that calls out the types of roads that are to be expected through these areas. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, I understand, and I'll pose the question to Mr. Bradley, see if he knows anything. Do you know, as a result, whether parking along those streets will be allowed or not allowed?
I believe there is parking shown on Newmarket Street. I can't recall if there's parking on 73rd, 71st, or Terminal. It looks like there are some bulb outs for some parking along 73rd and 71st towards the Newmarket side.
Right.
Yeah, that's my recollection at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of recreation areas for this development, we've discussed the large clubhouse proposed. Made note earlier that there's an enclosed recreation area at the southwest corner of the phase one. Would there be any other recreational facilities for occupants?
As of right now, what's proposed is the courtyard outdoor seating areas in different portions of the site. There were concepts thrown around during the site plan review for what could be in those areas, but those details will be shown on the building plans and on the site development grading plans if there are intended playgrounds or other like structures as a part of those areas.
Okay. There's always this chicken and egg quality to projects that involve commercial use where the applicant doesn't necessarily know what uses will come of those areas. On the other hand, from a planning standpoint, certain estimating needs to take place in order to establish relatively accurate traffic counts. So for purposes of traffic counting and other purposes, what have you envisioned as the commercial use of this site?
Yes, so as a part of the preliminary binding site plan and the anticipated commercial areas, they are proposing a 24-hour fitness area, a daycare, and some office areas, along with a deli as a part of the commercial uses within the development.
Okay. Would all of that be consistent with the comprehensive planning for the town center zone?
Yes, it would be consistent with the town center zone district requirements for commercial.
A number of people in speaking, well, as sort of an addendum to the concerns about the older Maple, spoke of fondly of this project as an area in which historically was available for walks through the area. Will any of it will it retain any kind of pathway for walking through the site, or has that been eliminated by the development?
There will be sidewalks throughout the site and connections throughout the development that I am assuming the developer would say is only for the residents or for the commercial users. I also will acknowledge that people use shortcuts like that through developments all the time as parts of walking routes throughout the city.
Acknowledged and agreed. I think those are all my questions, Mr. Baruch. I appreciate all that. Appreciate your patience through some poorly worded questions. There may be a few we come back to after we've heard from others. But would there be any other presentation by city staff, or are you the presentation?
Yes, that was it from city staff.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn then to the applicant for an opportunity to either add to or in other ways respond to the city's presentation. And would Mr. Bradley, would you be the presenter for the applicant?
Yes.
Okay. So have you sworn? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the full truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You've heard Mr. Baruch's testimony. You've heard my questions. You may have already come prepared with certain things that you wanted to speak to. This is your opportunity as to any of those things. What, if anything, would you like to say?
Sure. Yeah, I have nothing further to add to the presentation by Mr. Baruch. I do have an answer to your question on the roadway classification when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
The classification actually is listed as local access for all of those streets.
Okay.
However, the town center guidelines do expand upon that. So each one of the adjacent streets will have on-street parking on all 4 sides of the project. I believe that those are the 2 questions that those are the 2 questions that I believe were placed on me.
Okay, so under the town center guidelines as well as the local access standards, what would be expected then of streetscape and street front improvements?
Sure. Yeah, so all 4 of the streets will have a minimum lane of 11 feet wide. Most of the streets also have a 6-foot bike lane. New Market has a 6-foot bike lane. The other 3 streets have a 5-foot bike lane. So I shouldn't say most. Most of them are 5. One of them is 6. They all have a 7-foot parking lane. 3 of them have a 12-foot sidewalk, and New Market has a 10-foot sidewalk.
And then I assume a streetscape as well, landscape trees that required,
Yeah.
or is that in addition
Yes.
to sidewalks? Okay.
Yeah, and the 12-foot sidewalk has cutouts for street trees. If I'm
Okay.
pull this
All
up.
right. I apologize. Was there anything else that you said you were wanting to respond to?
I don't believe there's anything else that I was wanting to respond to at this time.
Okay. I had asked about pathways through the facility. Is there any sort of public pathway, or is it just the internal sidewalks?
Just the internal sidewalks. I will comment that this project will, like Mr. Baruch was saying, will complete 4 new street sections. One major one being the north-south New Market Street connection that will allow folks from the southern side to navigate now to near City Hall and the library there on a public sidewalk. So in some senses, yes, we're removing fields and places where people can go walk more in a natural setting. We are providing a hardscape path now as part of this development.
Understood. I don't, looking through my questions I had posed to city staff, I don't feel a need to repeat any of the others with you, Mr. Bradley, and again, you've already indicated that there just isn't anything else that you felt needing to respond to. Other than perhaps, would you acknowledge that the applicant has no objection to the proposed conditions of project approval?
That is correct. We have no exception to any of the conditions.
Okay, thank you. And again, would that conclude all presentation by the applicant?
It does.
Great. We'll turn then to determine to the public hearing portion and to see if there are members of the public who would like to be heard. Ms. Merriman, are you in charge of that aspect?
Well, I'm, pardon me, here at City Hall, and I do apologize for the lateness. There was some technical difficulties with the computer, but there's not been any public attending in person.
Okay.
If there are attendees that could be promoted or and microphones turned on, I believe that Alex or myself can do that if.
Well, I'm
Any
just trying to
attendees
figure out who
would
is serving as the sort of traffic cop on the remote aspect. Mr. Brook, are you currently showing anyone attending as a member of the public?
Yes, there's one person, and I can allow them to speak.
Okay, because they're not showing on my screen. So who do you show as attending?
B. Norton.
Okay, great. They're now showing up.
Hi there,
That sounds like a she. So Ms. Norton, your first name?
Betsy.
Betsy. Betsy?
Yes,
Okay. Ms. Norton, let's have you sworn. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes, I do.
I should have first asked if you wish to be heard. Would you like to provide testimony?
Well, I just have a couple of questions.
Okay, so what I do with questions, and actually, maybe I'll short circuit that. Normally, if there are several parties present, I like to keep I'll hold on to the questions and then ask them later just to make sure I'm in charge of my own hearing. But since you are the only person present, I think let's make a more efficient approach. Let's go ahead and just have you ask your questions directly, and then I'll see about them being answered. So what are your questions?
I'd like to know what percentage of the, are you leaving any trees at all when you do the construction?
Mr. Baruch, if you want to respond first, and at any point you want to turn to the applicant, that's fine too, but why don't you first respond?
Yes, give me one moment. I'll pull up the tree report that I've got right here, and I should be able to answer that.
I can cut to the chase a little bit by noting this is addressed in Ms. Baruch's staff report, where specific tree counts are noted.
Yes, there are 23 trees on the perimeter of the site that have the potential to be saved, is what was noted in the forester's report. The exact numbers will be detailed as we go through the civil plans.
Okay, when I looked at the drawing, it just didn't look like there was any way that they could leave anything there. So that's why I'm asking. What percentage of the what percentage of the lot is being covered with impervious surface?
Mr. Baruch, do you know?
Yes, I'm looking for the exact number, which is on the binding site plan. Give me one moment to zoom in on my own document. Uh, 75% of the site, and the maximum impervious surface within the town center zone district is 85%.
Okay. Okay, and then I'd just like to, I'm a little curious about a 4,300 square foot recreation center. That's private, correct? A private enclosed building that you're calling open space, is that right?
That is correct. It is a enclosed building as a part of the open space and recreational uses for the residents of the site.
And that's how Tumwater defines open space?
There are multiple different options as a part of the definition of open space, and that is one of the available options.
Okay. All right, I think that's, I'm just a little concerned about stormwater management, runoff, that kind of stuff. There's, I basically look at these things from a wildlife standpoint. It doesn't look like there's much habitat left here at all. And, yeah, I know that there was an applicant report that there are no gophers there, but these are prime gopher soils. So I'm just concerned about the analysis there and hoping that the stormwater management system that you've designed is fully scaled and filtering capably so that there isn't a lot of damage to wildlife. So that's really all I have to say.
Well, before you leave, Ms. Norton, let's just visit that issue. Mr. Bradley, as the project's engineer, how would you describe its proposed stormwater system?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the question. Right now, we're meeting City of Tumwater's 2022 stormwater design requirements, which requires enhanced treatment for this site. And so we're doing that in two different ways. One way is through bioretention soils that are engineered to remove pollutants. That's an 18-inch compost amended soil that will be running a portion of the stormwater through and then infiltrating into the sand layer beneath. The other facilities are going through mechanical treatment systems, which provide enhanced water quality treatment via filtration systems. And then those are infiltrated in underground rock galleries. All of these systems have been sized to handle to infiltrate 100% of the 100-year storm event. And then in the stormwater manual, we also outline in detail if these facilities were to fail, where this stormwater would go. And the requirements in the manual is that we're not allowed to impact downstream systems and downstream neighbors' properties. So we have taken all of those into account in the design of this system, all those requirements.
So where will it, if it overflows, where will it go?
It goes south on New Market Street down to Tumwater Boulevard.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bradley, and thank you, Ms. Norton.
Thank you.
And so I should, to be complete, ask if there are any other members of the public present today, even though there don't appear to be. But nonetheless, if I'm not seeing someone who is appearing remotely who would like to be heard, can you indicate by raising your hand? And Mr. Baruch, if you can let me know if you get any response.
I'm not seeing anyone else on the call.
Okay. Thank you. Then that will complete the public testimony portion, which gets us back to the opportunity for response. Mr. Baruch, would you like to respond in any way to Ms. Norton's questions or comments?
The only last thing that I guess I would say is that the gopher report that we have had that was completed by the applicant does not show any Mazama pocket gopher or endangered species on the property, and that is the requirement of the administrative determination. So we just wanted to mention that for the record, that we do have that, and it does not state that there will be any impact to endangered species.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Bradley, you're afforded the same opportunity to respond. Anything further you wish to respond to from Ms. Norton's comments?
No further comment.
Okay, thank you. That will conclude then the hearing in all aspects and bring this matter to a close. I'm going to go ahead and approve the application, the proposed binding site or phase binding site plan as proposed by the applicant and subject to the conditions suggested by city staff. That should note that the list of conditions is a lengthy one. I don't see how anything I attempt to do is going to improve upon that list. I think it's been well thought out already. There being 70 conditions of project approval that are being imposed. I'm in no mood to impose a 71st or more. I think that's more than enough. And so I feel it's certainly been addressed thoroughly through the conditions that have been imposed. That's a well thought out application. City staff has done an excellent job of reviewing it and taking into consideration all of its impacts. And despite its complexities, I don't find anything unusually troublesome or problematic about what is proposed, or most importantly, about its phasing, which is really the issue that's before me. So I'm going to go ahead and enter a decision approving it in its proposed phasing. That will take me a little bit of time because I must reduce what is a fairly extensive amount of detail into findings consistent with that determination. And so that will take me a few days to accomplish, but I hope to have done that by early next week. I do recognize that my decision holds up other processes, and I don't want those to be held up longer than necessary. So I will attend to this as quickly as I can, get that back to the city for distribution, which includes, of course, to the public, those who may be interested. Are there any last questions about that today? Mr. Baruch or Mr. Bradley? Good. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for your attendance and participation today. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you so much.